district first, and for everyone to learn about the district in a safe and positive manner. We hear from the community in a number of ways, and community input at our meetings must be respectful and civil in order to complete the work and have safety of community, students, staff, and board members. We continue online. This is consistent with our policies. We are the example for our children and are watching or participating tonight. Our ability to have this meeting civilly is what makes our community strong. First, we'll begin with the native land acknowledgement. Vice Chair Benalogo will read the acknowledgement this evening.
We acknowledge the land on which we sit and which we call the North Clackamas School District rests on the traditional and indigenous lands and village sites of the native peoples of the Kalapuya, Chinook, Molalla, and the Clackamas. We take this opportunity to offer gratitude for the ability to learn, work, and be a community on this land, and we offer thanks to the original caretakers of this region. We recognize the historic policies of colonization, genocide, relocation, and assimilation that affected Indigenous and Native families, both past and present, and that will affect those in the future, and honor the resilience and revitalization of our Indigenous and Native communities. We pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, who have been the stewards of this land throughout the generations.
Thank you, Director Benaloga. Board members, please turn off your cameras. Director McVeigh will lead the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which, hang on one second, my mute keeps coming back on.
Troy, are you there?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, it kept flashing. Sorry, I'll start over again. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director McVeigh. In the board packet, you will find the minutes of the December 8th, 2022 meeting of the North Clackamas School District Board of Directors. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? I'm looking for a hand.
Chair Bauer, I move that we approve the minutes from the December 8th, 2022 board meeting.
Thank you, Director Benaloga. Is there a second?
Director Schradel, second.
Director Schradel, thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. I call for a vote on the motion. Director Ford? I don't think she's joined us yet. Director McVeigh?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's working now. Aye.
Director Perez?
Aye.
Director Schradel?
Aye.
Director Way?
Aye.
Director Benaloga?
Aye.
And myself is aye. The motion passes, vote of 6-0. In the board packet, you will find a consent agenda for this evening's meeting. The items on the consent agenda are employment changes. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? And please read all the items included. It's just that one item, I think, tonight. Is there a motion?
Director Benaloga, I move board approval of the consent agenda, including employment changes.
Is there a second? Go ahead and just.
McVeigh, second.
Thank you. Discussion. Seeing none, hearing none, I'll call for a vote on the motion. Director Ford, I don't think he's present yet. Director McVeigh,
Aye.
Director Perez,
Aye.
Director Schradel,
Aye.
Director Way,
Aye.
Director, Vice Chair Benaloga,
Aye.
and myself as I. So the motion passes with a vote of 6-0. Moving on to community comments. Community comments is an opportunity for our community to share their ideas and opinions with the board. Input is welcome and valued. It's our duty to keep it safe, respectful for everyone, students, staff, and our community. This is not a time for discussion or debate. If you have materials for the board, please send them to our board director, executive assistant, and she will distribute them to the board members. Letters to the boards are always welcome, and each of us reads the input. Requests for information should be requested as outlined in policy KBA-AR, which I'll read. Any individual desiring to speak will have indicated their desire prior to the board meeting. A speaker will be required to give their name, city of residence, the group, if any, and be that is represented. If there are more patrons desiring to present comments in time allowed, board chair has authority to reduce the presentation time for individual speakers or institute a prioritization process. Speakers may offer objective criticism of district operations and programs that are of concern. The board is restricted from hearing and will not consider complaints regarding any individual staff member or any person connected with the district. As an organization centered around youth and their positive development, all speakers will model respectful public comment, be mindful of civil discourse. The board vests in its chair or other presiding officers authority to terminate the remarks of any individual when those remarks do not adhere to the rules established in the policy. A wide variety of individuals attend our board meeting, including students. Public comments must be appropriate for the audience, not create a hostile environment for those in attendance. Inappropriate language targeting of specific groups is not permitted. You will be given one warning and then you will be removed. The public has many ways of communicating with the board, including through written comment. In some circumstances, it may be appropriate for members of the public to communicate with written comments. In order to get through, we have 15 minutes. We have a full agenda. We will be giving each speaker 2 minutes. Time will begin after you state your name and residence. If you're unable to speak, please write an email because we hit that 15 minutes and it will be distributed to all board members. There will be no transferring minutes to another except a parent or guardian speaking for a child. And the order of speakers will be announced by me. After making your public comments, please exit from the Zoom meeting. You may continue watching the board meeting on North Clackamas School District YouTube channel. We prioritize students, and our first speaker is student Felix Kaiser. I hope I said the last name correctly. You can correct me if I didn't. Is Felix available?
Should be answering now.
Okay, welcome, Felix.
Hello there.
So you can begin by, well, state your name and then your city of residence.
Sure. I'm Felix Kaiser, and my city of residence is Milwaukee.
Okay, thank you.
Hello there. I'm Felix Kaiser. I'm a junior at Rex Putnam, and I'd like to share a story. I recently saw a video clip posted by a parent online from one of these previous board meetings. In the video, this parent claimed that teachers at their son's school allowed discrimination coming from the LGBTQ community. This parent's son goes to Rex Putnam, my school, and I had never experienced or heard of anything like this. I decided to look deeper. I learned that their claims that my LGBTQ peers are bigoted had very little basis. All of this had started when their son made public, unprompted videos on Instagram where he said many blatantly discriminatory things against the LGBTQ community. He soon received many responses from my peers, some serious, some not so much, but none containing any form of discrimination or bigotry. There was one private message that the student received that was discriminatory against a disabled individual. Obviously, I do not condone this. This person who made these comments should be punished. However, there doesn't seem to be any more evidence for their claims. This parent is making very serious accusations because of one singular message made by someone who does not represent the LGBTQ community. Another thing I discovered is that this parent has been publishing videos from these board meetings and turning them into entertainment. They call these videos a new reality series. Some of these videos contain dramatic edits and overlays. To them, this clearly isn't serious, it's amusement. This parent isn't alone. Many who are involved with our district agree with their views. I was also left frustrated with their negative comments about my teachers. As a student, I have seen school staff advocate for those who are marginalized. They are friendly, helpful, and allow my peers and I to enjoy school. They certainly do not allow any discrimination. I also appreciate you, the board, for all your volunteer work. The needless negativity towards staff at these meetings leaves a sour taste in my mouth. My point with this story is that those who speak at these board meetings against the LGBTQ community, against my teachers, and against you, the board, do so with little evidence or basis. It comes from a place of hate. All I ask is that you don't give their claims credence. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix. The next student is Kylie Corbus, and I believe one of her parents will be speaking on her behalf. Which parent will speak for Kylie?
It's Michael.
Okay, Michael, you state your name and your residence.
It's Oak Grove. Michael Corbus.
Okay, you can begin.
Hang on. I'm not ready yet. Bring it back. Bring it back.
Michael,
You guys, come on. All right. A few weeks back, a person at the district reached out to quote unquote address our concerns. We are always willing to meet, so we ended up meeting last Thursday. He is a well-meaning guy, but pretty quickly after letting us talk, it seemed to us that his agenda for the meeting was about two things. First, to try to get us to not speak publicly about the hateful screenshot messages that came from the LGBTQ bigoted bully kids towards my son and his disabled sister. He would rather us speak privately, and we understand this,
Michael,
as
please.
it's embarrassing for him.
Michael,
and
please don't
school.
target certain groups.
Okay, bring the time back then.
No, go ahead.
You're interrupting. He would rather us speak privately, and we understand this, as it is embarrassing for him, the school district, and challenges the worldview that certain groups are oppressors and others are oppressed. When your favorite so-called marginalized oppressed group is actually doing the oppressing. And secondly, to our shock, and that last speaker is lying. In fact, we have messages from him as well.
Michael, I'm going to have to ask you to discontinue attacking students on our forum. I'm going to have to ask you to, please, Finn, you're done. So please, okay, our next speaker is Jeanette DeCastro. And can you fix the time?
Oh, sorry.
Is Jeanette available?
I believe that was them that has now been admitted. Might be taking a second to connect.
Okay, and the clock is going again.
Sorry. On a different screen and it keeps starting.
So Jeanette DeCastro is present or online.
Looks like audio is connecting.
Good evening. I'm sorry for my technical difficulties here. My name is Jeanette DeCastro.
And your city of residence?
I am in Clackamas, near Happy Valley.
Okay,
And
welcome.
my kids, thank you. My kids are at Spring Mountain Elementary. And I wanted to share an appreciation that the school district and the school board are supportive of the new equity advisory committee work. I think that's really exciting. And personally for our family, that we feel welcome in our school. And just a big thank you for that. It's important to me personally, and I never have any concerns about my kids at school, and I'm sorry they're with me right now, because I know if there's something going on, I can talk to a teacher or a principal, and most of the time things are going really well. And I just wanted to share my appreciation for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Amy Reiner.
It should be connecting now.
Okay, the clock needs to be reset again. Yeah. Is Amy available?
I am. Can the board hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Amy. Go ahead, state your name and your city of residence, and then we'll start the clock.
Great. Thank you so much. My name is Amy Reiner, and I am a resident of Damascus. First and foremost, I appreciate the time here today, so thank you for allowing me to speak. I am here to talk about the recent Supporting Gender Expansive Student guideline for schools that the Oregon Department of Education just released. And I read through the 48 pages, and there's a page 14 is concerning, and I'm hoping that the board is able to provide me with some sort of policy. But as it reads, and I'm going to read an excerpt of the policy here from Oregon Department of Education. It states students are not publicly asserting their authentic gender identity, may have privacy concerns about students, staff, community members, or their families finding out before they are ready to share their identity more widely. Parents and family support is the goal with supporting gender expansive students, which is fantastic, but may not be possible in all situations. Schools should refer to their current policies when there may be safety concerns. To the extent possible, students or schools should refrain from revealing information about a student's gender identity, even to the parents, caregivers, or other school administrators, without permission from the student. Board, my question here today is whether or not there is a policy here in North Clackamas that is put in place that I can certainly read. And I apologize if there is. I've gone on the North Clackamas website to search this specific policy that supports the gender identity between the school and the child rather than the school and the parent. But looking forward to your comment and appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. I did hear your request, and someone will get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitzi.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next is Tara Nelson. Is Tara available to speak?
Hello.
Hi, Tara, we do hear you. I see the clock is at 2 minutes, so state your name and your residence, and then you can begin.
All right, I was just trying to find the camera. One moment.
You're on. Yeah, we do see you.
All right, thank you. Tara Nelson, Damascus, Oregon. There is a school safety town hall sponsored by the City of Happy Valley and its youth council, and a coordinated sponsorship with North Clackamas School District and Clackamas County Sheriff's Office this past November 22. This event was free that included content towards students in middle and high school and their parents' caregivers. Teens and their parents were invited to learn about school safety and the emergency response procedures utilized by school officials and law enforcement. Yet we haven't seen such an event offered to the west side of the school district in Milwaukee. Why would North Clackamas target only half the district? Why not make this accessible to the entire district with 2 town halls and reach out to the city of Milwaukee to partnership an important topic? One request that was strongly suggested is that when a safety threat is taking place at one of our campuses, parents refrain from arriving at school to gather children and cause additional chaos. Yet how are we to trust this request when our own district threat assessment protocol is dated from 2018? The North Clackamas School Stat Steering Team members is outdated. First off, on this PDF file, there is no immediate and accessible contact information for the 12 staff members listed. Second, once you do locate this team of 12, only 2 have current and accurate location for the staff member. The next 2 have contact info to the wrong campus working location. 6 of the employees are in the directory, but no contact info listed. And the last 2 are not even in the directory. Are they still employed with the district? I find this concerning and quite the opposite of our district's community relations and communications mission statement. Enhance student success through internal and external relationship and strategic communications to build understanding, partnerships, and trust. I look forward to your response.
Okay, thank you, Tara. And okay, the next speaker, Angela Peterson.
All right. Can you
Yeah, I
guys
do
hear
see
me?
you. I see you, Angela. Welcome.
Okay. Hi there. This is Angela Peterson from Oregon City, and I'd like to thank the board tonight for adding the library media services report to tonight's agenda. This report includes information on a formal procedure to review books and other instructional materials that receive complaints. Knowledge of that procedure is new to myself and others who would have been bringing attention, to a growing number of obscene and pornographic books found in our middle schools and high schools. According to the district's code 2AAR2, this procedure for reconsideration of use of resource/instruction materials was implemented in 2005 and then reviewed in 2012. Had the board or the superintendent informed us of this formal procedure 8 months ago when we first began providing alarming details of what we were discovering in our district's schools, perhaps we could have found resolution much sooner. However, even if this procedure were in place, it doesn't answer how or why these books ended up in our schools in the first place, which is why after 8 months of pleading with you to take a look at these harmful books and getting nothing but confirmation that that at least 2 board members approved the obscene and pornographic content, we felt no other choice than to file a criminal report with the state and federal authorities. We agree that our libraries should be a place of wonder and discovery for all children in our community. We also believe that the content within our schools and libraries should protect minors from obscene and pornographic illustrations and descriptions of minors or adults engaging in sex acts, rape, or incest. We look forward to a response to our concerns and that all parents and guardians in the district will be made aware of this procedure to file a complaint using this procedure of reconsideration of use of resources and materials. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And I think we just have time for one more speaker tonight on this longer list. Story Long. This procedure to file a complaint using this procedure of reconsideration. Okay, Story, I see your picture. You need to unmute yourself.
Hi, sorry. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, we can hear you. State your name and city of residence.
My name is Story, and I am a preacher and organizer with Storyline Community in Clackamas, and I do work with the North Clackamas School District. So the question of which books, and this I want to speak about which books are allowed in our library, is a nuanced one that hinges on questions of whether access being the appropriate word here, since to my knowledge, no one is being forced to read these books, and if it does harm to students. I've yet to be shown evidence that these books like Genderqueer and other books like them actually pose harm, but I don't want to use my time to talk about that book specifically. First, I just have 2 main points I want to address that I've seen come up in these meetings that has disturbed me a little. First is that words are important. Sometimes groomer is the right and appropriate word, and that's been thrown around a lot, but it's just not in this case. Hallmarks of groomers are that they deprive their victims of healthy knowledge of their bodies and boundaries. And I know one of the specific scenes that is often referenced is pornographic. And is a scene between two consenting partners where one person says, I don't like this, and another says, okay, let's stop. I'm sorry, but depictions of healthy, empowered boundaries being respected is not something a groomer would use. You can argue maybe that this book shouldn't be in a high school library, and I would entertain that argument in good faith, but just want to throw out there that that word is used inappropriately. Like I said, I don't really want to talk about this book the rest of my time. I do want to talk about what is real harm, which is the lack of empathy, alienation, isolation from your peers, lack of support from adults that can harm LGBTQIA+ students. That is a very real harm, and it is backed by statistics and research that these students are more likely to be victims of violence and bullying. And that's what I would want to concern myself with. I care about every student in our school, and I want things that impede all of them from thriving to be dealt with. That would include stories that our queer students can see themselves in, and stories that our straight students can read and build empathy. So I don't really want to get caught up on that specific book, just that I would advocate for continuing to expand the kind of books in our libraries.
Thank you, Story. Thank you, everyone. We have reached our limit of time. I would encourage others to write letters, and we will read those. Letters we received since the last meeting consist of teacher requests for respectful dialogue and the importance of students to feel safe and respected. Community input regarding online screen format at our meetings. Community member in support of in-person board meetings. Community member requests to confirm the board email link. Parent requests for more rigorous and personalized curriculum for students. Parent question regarding the reading curriculum that is used in our district. Staff concern about staff changes at Beatrice Merrill Kennedy. Community concern about our public health crisis. So as we transition, let's just take a 5-minute recess, and we'll be back to start up with the North Clackamas Education Association featured educator. Hey, we're about ready to get back started. Okay, next on our agenda is the North Clackamas Education Association NCA featured educator. And I would welcome NCA Representative Doug Bridge. And I see that you are here and you are on.
Yeah,
Welcome,
good
Doug.
evening. Thank you, Director Bauer. Good evening, fellow directors, colleagues. It is a tremendous pleasure, is all I can say, to introduce to you our monthly North Clackamas Education Association Teacher of the Month. But before we begin, Chester, I think you and I should hold out until we get that totally cool wood paneled North Clackamas background for ourselves, like everyone else seems to have. But anyway, I'd like to talk a little bit about Chester. I have never had the pleasure of working with Chester, but my wife has, and she raves about him. I'm going to read you a couple of the folks who nominated Chester as Educator of the Month and tell you what they had to say about him. Becky Gestrin says, when I stepped into teaching science from health, Chester's support was critical to my transition and success. His work is engaging, rigorous, encourages collaboration in the classroom, and supports the district goals. He creates all these lessons in both Spanish and English and unselfishly puts them on a shared site for all teachers in the district to use. He's never asked for acknowledgement, and in the act of sharing with all the teachers across the district, his reach goes beyond just his own students. He deserves acknowledgement. Megan Sternberg, our instructional coach for K-12 science, writes, Chester is a relentless learner. He thoughtfully processes and implements new instruction and assessment practices that we are exploring as a middle school science team. While he is trying out new things, he generously opens his door for observations and coaching. Chet graciously accepts feedback without ego or defensiveness. He is a joy to work with. And our last colleague writes, Chet puts so much time outside of class to ensure his lessons are planned and prepped to maximize student success. He regularly adapts his pedagogy and revises his lessons and assessments to meet current research on best practices. Chet is a committed teacher, willing to go the extra mile for students. And if you allow me a little time here, there are two students who also had a couple of sentences to share. One student said, former student said, he is one of the best science teachers I've ever had and inspired me to consider a career in science. He helped me actively engage in my learning. He cares about students and was a nice teacher. And finally, our last student says, he was always passionate about what he taught, and he tried his best to make sure all his students learned as much as they could. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to welcome and introduce you to Chester Garrison.
Welcome, Chester. Would you like to say a few words? And congratulations.
Hi. Hopefully this comes through. I'm broadcasting live from Beaverton. My son's at hockey practice. He plays for the 10U Junior Winterhawks team. But first of all, I would like to, in honor of the School Board Recognition Month, I want to say thank you to the board members for all that you do for our students. I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. You guys are the rock stars of our school district, and I appreciate you guys. I also want to say it's nice to be recognized. I'm kind of like a little bashful about this, but it's quite an honor, and I feel like there's a lot of teachers that deserve this recognition, and I thank everyone for like saying those very kind things. Students are in the forefront of my mind always, and I want to make sure that there's access for all students in my science classes. So it's just really important to me. And I think like the challenging part of my job is trying to continue to stay current. And yeah, it's just something that I work really hard at. And I just want to thank everyone. Thanks for having me today.
Well, congratulations, Chester. Impressive work, inspiring your students. That's great. Any other comments? Congratulations from any other board members? Doctor. Director Perez, I made you into a doctor.
Thank you, Chester. I just want to say something you just said at the end there kind of touched me about students are at the forefront of your mind always, and that all students have access. And I think some of the things that we heard tonight from your peers and as far as collaboration in the classroom and maximizing student success, willing to always go the extra mile for the students, passionate, committed. We wish we could clone you, and all teachers could have all that. I just thank you for all you do for our students. At the end of the day, that's what we're all here for, our students and their families. Thank you.
Any other board members wish to speak? Seeing none. Congratulations, Chester, and yeah, well-deserved. Inspiring others to go into science. Great. And sharing your knowledge. Thank you so much for being there for our kids.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, School Board Recognition Month. I welcome Superintendent Shay James for the next agenda item.
Good evening, directors, and thank you. The Oregon School Board Association has set aside the month of January to honor the unpaid elected volunteers who serve in Oregon's 197 local school boards, 19 educational service districts, and 19 community college boards. Our staff want to personally honor our school board members who come from and represent diverse backgrounds, which gives our board a variety of unique perspective. Your gifts allow you to work together as you collectively oversee the business of the school district. Our school board's main goal is to support student achievement. To achieve that goal, the board focuses on many essential job functions while upholding desired traits of an effective school board member with skills and attributes such as, but not limited to, keeping students first, maintaining high standards of conduct, treating all individuals with respect, maintaining channels of communication, focusing on important issues, modeling transparency, and of course, maintaining a sense of humor through it all, believing in public schools, all while striving to reach consensus on difficult issues. I truly could go on and on regarding the unique skills you each bring to our school district, and we are truly better because of you. I want to personally thank the North Clackamas School Board on behalf of our staff across the district for the many hours you give of your personal time volunteering in service of our students, our staff, our families, and our communities. Serving on a school board requires a great deal more than just showing up for school board meetings. You all spend countless hours of advocacy for our students with legislation, budget, bond oversight, and committee meetings, in addition to the many hours reading emails, public comments, board packets, and large volumes of documents and articles that are sent to you. As a staff, we are fortunate to have each one of you representing and serving our school district. And I want to thank you for taking the time to read each and every communication sent to you, which you do. Every event, meeting, phone call you attend on our behalf. It is important to note this is all done with no pay outside of your day jobs that you have. You have a small token of appreciation from our staff that you will receive soon, and we hope you enjoy that, and thank you for all you do. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Community Relations, Curtis Long, to share a tribute in your honor.
Well, thank you, Dr. James, and thank you to all of our directors who are here this evening. I'm excited to present to you tonight. I hope as School Board Recognition Month continues throughout this month of January that you are receiving lots of accolades and will continue to receive accolades throughout this month from adults in our school district and our older students. But what about our younger kids? Do they know what a school board is? Do they know what an impact you make on their lives every single day? Well, that's exactly what ace videographer Brian McGrew and I set out to find out this past week. And Director Bauer, Director Benaloga, Director McVeigh, Director Ford, Director Perez, Director Schradel, and Director Way, this is what we came up with. Low volume.
I don't hear the sound.
Where's the volume?
Yeah, I think we need some volume. Maybe start over.
Are you muted, Donna?
You were still not hearing it.
You may be muted on the Zoom meeting still. I can give it a try if you'd like.
That's okay. It just adds to the suspense.
What do you want to be when you grow up? Someday I hope to be a teacher. Someday I hope to be a professional wrestler. Teacher. Zookeeper. Teacher. Someday I hope to be a doctor. Policeman. A veterinarian. I hope to be an eye doctor. Who's helping you achieve that goal? My brother's gonna help me. My teacher, Mrs. Whitaker. My mommy. My dad, day teacher. My aunt because she's a doctor. My teacher. My mom. I also have 7 school board members working hard to ensure my success. What's a school board? How does that help? In North Clackamas is a group of 7 everyday citizens who go above and beyond to make sure we're successful. They spend hours and hours of their own time away from their family. They hold 2 meetings every month plus work sessions, plus attend district activities and performances. They build partnerships and make sure we have supplies and technology to help us succeed. All their decisions affect almost 17,000 students like us in our district. They make sure taxpayers' money is spent wisely. They pay special attention to what's happening in the state legislature. Have you seen the improvements made to every school building in the past few years? Wow! I bet they answered hundreds of phone calls and emails and attended meetings while they were out and about in the community. Wow! Did you know they're volunteers and they don't get paid? Well, who are these special people?
Lost the sound again.
Thank you, Lord McVeigh. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for believing in us.
Thank you for believing in us. Thank you for believing in us.
Thank you for believing in us.
Thank you for believing in us. No question, we love our school board. I love you guys.
Sorry for the audio blip there.
So we know that you missed a little bit of it, but we will make sure that gets sent to you and it will be posted on our website and our social media, and we'll get it out. So quite a special tribute to you all. So in addition to that, tonight I'm joined by our Chief of Staff, Tiffany Shireman, our Assistant Superintendent of Operations, Cindy Detchen, and our Assistant Superintendent of Education, Dr. Yvonne Dibley, to read the School Board Recognition Month proclamation in North Clackamas School District.
Whereas school boards create a vision for what students should know and be able to do. Whereas school boards establish clear standards for student performance. Whereas school boards ensure that student assessments are tied to established standards.
Whereas school boards are accountable to the community for operating schools that support student achievement. Whereas school boards align school district resources to ensure that students meet standards. Whereas school boards create a climate that supports the philosophy that all children can learn at high levels.
Whereas school boards build collaborative relationships based on trust, teamwork, and shared accountability. And whereas school boards are committed to continuous education and training on issues related to student achievement.
Now, therefore, I hereby declare my appreciation to the members of the North Clackamas School Board and proclaim the month of January to be the School Board Recognition Month. I urge our community to join me in recognizing the dedication and hard work of our local school boards in preparing today's students for tomorrow's world. So truly, thank you all.
Well, thank you. We are a team. We have to all work together. So thank you for the effort on that. Any comments from my fellow board members? Director Way, do you have your hand up? Oh, no, that's a heart. Sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
I share something. I just really appreciated the video. So Curtis, thank you for doing that. And it's just a pleasure to work and serve alongside all my other volunteer school board members. I think my family still don't really know what I do, and that's okay. I'm going into my 5th year. They just know that I disappear sometimes in the evenings from time to time, and I come back late. So, but no, I am just so proud to serve North Clackamas and you know, just to be in this great community. I see a lot of these folks who are here, but also folks, you know, parents who are just so active. And like when I see them at coffee shops and, you know, our students doing great things, there's just isn't enough really great things to share about what this district does and what each and every one of us does inside the classrooms and also out in the community. So yeah, so thank you, everybody.
Anyone else? Thank you. And I do appreciate all the different voices and the backgrounds that my fellow board members bring to our discussion. Thank you so much. Agenda item 3, Milwaukee El Puente Elementary. I welcome Executive Director Elementary Programs, Kalia Williams Rodriguez, for this agenda item, and will ask you to introduce your guests and presenters. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy Thursday. This evening, I'm excited and ecstatic to welcome our principal, Karina Brucese, and her team. We have assistant principal and Brittany Lopez as well. So they are ready to share with you the highlights of their school.
Buenas noches a todos los miembros de la mesa directiva y los administradores. Yo soy la directora Karina Brucese y tengo el placer de servir como directora de Milwaukee El Puente. I'm here tonight as the principal of Milwaukee El Puente, and it's been a pleasure to be the principal at this school for now my 2nd year. I'm hoping you see the front slide. One of the first things I want to do is thank the voters for the beautiful new entrance that came along with quite a lovely remodel. When I arrived at the school last fall, the remodel had happened. And so it was amazing. I had been at the school maybe 8-10 years ago, just on a visit, and the amount of light and fresh, amazing learning space. It's just terrific. If you haven't been by, I invite you all. So, the other picture that you see is a sunrise view on our playground. We start really early in the morning, so I get the pleasure of watching the sunrise on the cold playground quite a bit. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, share a little bit about our school, and I brought with me Militza Limi, who is the assistant principal, and also Brittany Lopez, who is an instructional coach at my site. You're going to hear us speak in English and in Spanish, and you'll also get to see another kid video. I'm crossing my fingers for good sound on this one. Some of you may know that Milwaukee El Puente is one school now, but in its history, it was 2 sites, a dual language immersion program named El Puente and the neighborhood program named Milwaukee. About 3 years ago, those sites were intentionally merged to really form one community of Milwaukee El Puente. Our mascot is the Pumas, and we're a group of really excited, happy, proud Pumas. And you'll see their little footsteps, the little paw prints throughout our slides. We are excited that our work aligns well with the district mission of inspiring graduates who are empowered to act with courage in life and to strengthen local and global communities. Community is really one of our core values. You'll see the values in the box on the left of the slide. Our values include belonging, respect, and emotional safety, academic growth and cognitive challenge, community and relationship building skills, and of course, cultural, racial, and linguistic diversity. I mentioned that we are a school that encompasses both a neighborhood program and a dual language immersion program. I want to talk just a second about what that is for those of you who may not be familiar. It's a privilege to be able to host 2/3 of our classrooms where students are learning in both English and Spanish on a daily basis. And our goal in those classrooms is not only promoting multilingualism and affirming the diverse identities, languages, races, and cultural heritages of our students, but also having that strong academic achievement, which is present in our neighborhood classrooms as well. So there's a lot going on in the school. And if you walked through our halls, you would hear those 2 languages, definitely, but as you'll see later in the slides, you might hear some other languages as well. And we're very proud and excited about that. I'm not going to read all of the things on the top right, but I do want to go back to the fact that the newly remodeled building includes so many improvements, too many to name, both to the inside and the outside spaces, but it doesn't include our reader board. This made me laugh. It's probably been there since 1940 something. And Miss Leamy and I have had the pleasure of changing those letters with a great deal of effort on a regular basis. We have 425 students in 19 different classrooms, and all of the staff that goes along with that. It's an amazing staff, very dedicated to the students we serve and to the community, and not just to the academic success of students, but to their social and emotional well-being and to really meeting them where they are. I'm going to click on this. It might take a second. I've noticed a delay, but I would like you to hear our students and our staff speak for themselves. This is about a 2-minute video. But before I start it, I want to thank Tina Herrera, who is part of the North Clackamas School District Tech Department, without whose assistance this video would never have come together. So let me give this a try.
Hola a todos, mi nombre es Leticia Jiménez y yo soy la maestra de primer grado aquí en el puente, Milwaukee El Puente. Estoy muy emocionada de estar trabajando, este es mi 2º año aquí en esta escuela y me encanta trabajar con los niños y con las familias, poder comunicarme con todas las personas con quien trabajo aquí. Una de las cosas que me encanta es poder enseñar el lenguaje, ya que yo vine de México a la edad de 16 años y empecé a aprender inglés.
Buenos días, me llamo Martin y una cosa que me gusta de Milwaukee El Puente es tener la oportunidad de aprender en inglés y español.
Hi, my name is Tony, and something that I like about this school is that it's bilingual, and when it's bilingual, I feel like I learn more things, like I learn more about my English, my Spanish, and it's just something great that this school is bilingual.
Mi nombre es Sebastián y algo que me gusta de esta escuela es los maestros y maestras.
Hola, soy Sofía. Me gusta que la escuela sea bilingüe porque me ayuda a aprender inglés.
Hola, me llamo Claudia y algo que me gusta de esta escuela es los maestros y las maestras.
Hola, me llamo Jaden y algo que me gusta de esta escuela es cómo puedes aprender en manera de español y inglés.
My name is Emilio and I like to play with my friends at recess. Mi nombre es Lucas y me gusta aprender. My name is Colina and I am English and my favorite thing to do is math. My name is Zola and I like to go in the swings.
My name is Rudy, and one thing that I like about Milwaukee El Puente is all the art that they have here. My name is Liam, and what I like about Milwaukee is that everybody is kind and caring. Hi, my name is Greta, and my favorite thing about Milwaukee El Puente is that everyone's just really kind and stuff.
Hi, I'm Maggie Hull. I teach 3rd grade at Milwaukee El Puente. I'm a second-year teacher. I love teaching at Milwaukee El Puente because we have a really strong community here. I plan with my team all of the time. I work with other grade levels, and everyone here is really kind and friendly. And Karina is so thoughtful and thinks about us and does special things for us. So it's amazing to work here.
Hola, me llamo Bárbara y lo que más me gusta es el patio de juegos porque hay muchos juegos y puedes correr y soy peruana.
Okay, thanks. I hope you enjoyed the video. I just want to say I did not pay the teacher for that comment. It was very sweet, but I was surprised when I saw it. We do have an amazing staff who bring so much energy to the work every day, right? And it's exciting to work with them. I look forward to it every day. So I want to talk a little bit. Oops, I think I might have accidentally skipped a slide. Give me a sec. There it is. My apologies. I want to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives and some of the things that are happening in our school. I refer to our values at the beginning. And when we think about our social emotional learning and connections, that really aligns well with our values of belonging, respect, and emotional safety in community and relationship building. We are, like every other elementary school in our district, using the Caring School Community curriculum as our social emotional learning curriculum. And our teachers have found it to be a wonderful support in building community and an environment where students feel comfortable taking risks as learners and build skills to work with each other, not just academically, but on the playground and beyond. We're very fortunate to get the support of Marie Claire Wanacott with our staff. Her guidance has been so valuable. Another thing that we've really gone back to is we're doing monthly assemblies. And, you know, last year was a getting back to learning year. This year is a year where we're putting in place all of those things that bring extra joy into a school. And that includes assemblies and other opportunities that bring kids together across grade levels and beyond. So in our assemblies, we have students singing and showing off poems and other work for each other. And we're very fortunate to have Miss Baker, our music teacher, to always lead us in songs, even a cappella, and the students do amazing work. Starting next week, we'll be doing our leadership opportunities for 5th graders. We really want to launch them into 5th grade, feeling proud and strong and developing some skills so they can be leaders into middle school. And that includes opportunities for them to work in our recycling program, do deliveries for classrooms, and participate in school announcements, which they really enjoyed last year. We are incredibly fortunate to have lots of community engagement and an active parent-teacher organization. The PTO has done so much for us as individual teachers, fundraising for the school, helps us with equipment, brings occasional treats and surprises, and plans community events. We're very grateful for their support. We have the site council back up and running this year. And the exciting thing was that we had to have a vote because I had too many interested parents. And that was a good problem to have. So that was really exciting. And we've had our first meeting and we'll be having our second meeting soon. We're also the recipients of the support of the Milwaukee Lutheran Church, who brings us backpack buddies, extra food for some of our families in need. The Rotary Club supports us by buying books for the Oregon Battle of the Books program. We're engaged in Aves Compartidas, which is a multicultural educational program that talks about the ecology and migratory birds between Mexico and the US. We have high school mentors coming up from next door at Milwaukee High. And as you might imagine, students love them because when you're a high school student in an elementary school, I think our students have figured out high school students are like celebrities. It's so neat to see. And so far, our volunteers are back. Yay, we're so excited. And we, last I checked, which was last week, we had 350 volunteer hours and we had 36 different volunteers come into our school to help with everything from picture day to art projects to the library to classroom and reading with students. And so that it's a real value for us that we are a learning community, and that includes the adults as well outside of our school, the adults in school, and of course our students. We do have obvious goals. We have places where we really want to refine and improve. So when you think about our continuous improvement goals, that really aligns to our value of academic growth and cognitive challenge. And we're really looking at bringing kids back into meeting those rigorous standards. I know it's been a tough few years for our students. So we're working on focusing on third grade in particular for math, and having them demonstrate growth in math and approach or surpass grade level. We measure that with STAR, which is an assessment. And also, of course, we want to see all of our students growing and developing in reading, and not just obviously the decoding and the phonics and all of the pieces from reading up to comprehension so that they can fully understand and engage with what they read. Very excited to be able to do that with our professional learning communities and our multi-tiered systems of support. And I think I'm looking at what we have. I think I'm passing this on to one of my colleagues if I'm correct.
That is correct. Thank you, Karina. And to continue with the improvement goals while focusing on our core values, which are belonging, respect, and emotional safety, community and relationship building skills, and cultural, racial, and linguistic diversity, we are hopeful that by the end of the school year, when looking at student-to-student interactions, 85% or more of our 3rd through 5th grade students will report that other students are friendly to them, which will be measured by the Youth Truth Survey results in 2023. In addition, our goal is to ensure that by the end of this school year, 75% or more of our 3rd through 5th grade students will report that there is an adult at school they can talk to, as measured by the Youth Truth Survey in the spring of 2023. We will get there by continuing to implement caring school communities school-wide, hold care team meetings every other week that are focused on SEL and MTSS, continue to host monthly assemblies and cross-age buddies, and focus on integrating equity and inclusion in our classrooms and staff meetings. For the linguistic and cultural richness, our values here are centered around the cultural, racial, and linguistic diversity. We are proud to say that in addition to English, our students come from homes where the following languages are spoken: Bosnian, Cantonese, Czech, Dutch, German, Korean, Spanish, Tagalog, Ukrainian, and Vietnamese. We have 132 students who speak a language other than English at home and are becoming bilingual. In addition, we have another 21 students who have demonstrated English proficiency and are on a monitored status. 127 of our students who are from English-speaking homes are participating in the Spanish and English DLI program and are becoming bilingual. 2/3 of our staff are fluent Spanish speakers, and we also have staff who speak Russian, Ukrainian, Serbian, and Polish. Some things we are looking forward to that focus on all of our Milwaukee El Puente values are hosting an artist in residence, which supports the Right Brain Initiative, continuing with many more community activities, having conversations around equity and inclusion, improved health for our community, students and staff, consistent student attendance as well as stamina, and increased partnership to enrich our support of students. And these are just some different ways to say thank you in various languages. Hvala vam, which is thank you in Serbian. Thank you for your continued support of Milwaukee El Puente.
Thank you. And I was not a very gracious lead speaker. I did not even introduce that was Milica Limi, our assistant principal. And not only that, I also asked our instructional coach, Brittany Lopez, to be here with us. And then I presented her slide. So my apologies to all. But thank you for giving us the opportunity to share about our fabulous school.
Thank you. We enjoyed the presentation. I'll open it up to the floor for any board members to ask questions, comments.
I have a question.
Okay, Director McVeigh, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I hope I didn't miss it. I've never lost my internet completely. I had to join by phone for a few minutes.
Oh, no.
I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say 2/3 of the students there enrolled in the dual? How many of them continue on into middle school in that program? And if they do, where do they attend?
Oh, that's such a good question. I don't have the exact numbers. We do have some attrition, as you might imagine, right? Sometimes we kind of lose students on the way up, they move, right? Currently, we have some pretty large 5th grade classrooms, which is exciting. Last year, I would say like 85 to 90% continued to the program into middle school. And I hope they continued into high school. I kind of lose track beyond that. If our current numbers are any indication, they're pretty robust classes with 25 or more at 5th grade. So that would be a lot of students heading up to the middle school dual language. I believe, and someone correct me on this, only my 2nd year in the district, I believe it's Alder Creek. Okay, I see someone nodding.
Yes, that is correct.
So they don't get to go with their peers to RAL.
That, that's a good point. Occasionally, one of the reasons we miss students, continuing is they have a really strong connections with neighborhood peers and they want to go there. So middle schoolers, right?
Yeah. Second question is, with 2/3 of kids in the dual immersion program, are we concerned about the neighborhood school not being able to serve neighborhood kids that aren't in the program, or are we at capacity at the school?
Our school right now, some of our grade levels are at capacity, but our numbers look good. We have in the 20s, good mid-20s in most of our classrooms, both on the neighborhood side and on the dual language side. We definitely have neighborhood students who have submitted interest through the lottery and been successful and are in, our dual language. And of course, we have neighborhood families that aren't exactly interested for one reason or another in dual language and are happy in our English track. So right now it's feeling pretty balanced at the moment.
Thank you for that.
Of course.
Other directors?
I have a question.
Okay, Director Way.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I was just reading a little bit more on just, some of the things that we're seeing on the at a glance in our board book around the math scores and just a little bit more of a focus and attention to improving outcomes around math. And I think, Karina, you mentioned doing more work with the third graders to improve their test scores, etc. Can you tell us a little bit more about, what might be some of the challenges that y'all are experiencing and with that regard? And then you mentioned the STAR assessment, but are there other, proactive interventions, things that we're really going to be working on, hopefully in the next year to make sure that we have, great math outcomes with our students?
Thank you. That's a really good question. Math is definitely, everyone thinks reading, and reading's critical. I was a reading specialist, so I understand, but getting our students comfortable in being mathematicians and mathematical thinkers is really important, not just for the scores, but beyond, right? Math is an important life skill. So, I think one challenge that all elementary schools faced, just needs to be said, and that's the experience they've had in the last few years in going to school online. So it took a while last year to work through that. There was definitely some time lost that we're trying to make up. So we're really working on using our current math adoption and making sure my instructional coach is on this meeting somewhere, and I would invite her if she'd like to speak to it in a second, to really make sure teachers have the tools, both in terms of manipulatives, but also strategies to get all students involved. One of the things that we see sometimes in math classrooms, and some of you may remember this, is that the students who know are always me, I want to talk, I want to be engaged. And so teachers, we're working on some strategies as a district actually to get more students actively involved in the learning and talking to each other and talking to peers, because the more conversation and hands-on engagement with something like math, the more we're going to build not only the mathematical capacity, but also the ability for students to see themselves as mathematical thinkers and be able to take risks. So we're definitely working on that. STAR is an assessment we give 3 times a year just to sort of check in and see if we're seeing progress. When we get those results, we get together and we talk about who might need extra support and who's at or above. And we really think about what are the strategies or who might be available to support small groups of students who need a little bit of an extra, either extra opportunities to practice with the material or to actually be retaught the material. Does that help a little bit? So we're always trying to get better. Ms. Lopez, I know you're on here. If you'd like to add anything from the instructional coach perspective about math, that would be great.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Lopez, and I'm the instructional coach at Milwaukee El Puente. And one of the things that I just absolutely love about Milwaukee El Puente is because we have instruction in Spanish and in English, our PLCs are really focused on math. And so because we're learning the same content, one's just in the language of Spanish and one's in the language of English, there's a lot of transferable skills between the teachers. So newer teachers are learning from like veteran teachers, and there's a lot of transferable about how effective are we being with our core instruction in a culturally responsive way. But because we have a little bit of alignment, there's things that are like strategies that are thrown out of saying like, oh, that's a GLAD strategy of how we could get students to talk about this. And there's deeper connections with accountable talk structures and effective questioning strategies and meaningful tasks. One of the things that we also do both, it doesn't matter what language of instruction, we bring teachers on learning walks and get to see other teachers teaching math and other subjects, but especially math. And so we'll have either like a coach in the ear or another teacher come and tell that teacher who's on a learning walk, okay, look for these specific points and then go and implement them back in your classroom. So lots of interaction with each other between English and Spanish, lots of kind of cross grade level work. So looking at, okay, these are where my students are right now. What are the standards that they need to be really proficient at right now? And what are some standards that maybe they need to have some exposure and they'll get some deeper work in the coming years. So I love working here.
Okay, thank you. Any other directors? Great
I can
report. Oh, go ahead, Director
I can
Perez.
go, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. B, Ms. Leamy, Ms. Lopez, for the presentation. I was just sitting here absorbing presentation, and I would kind of had a flashback to when I was just a student and in elementary, and I was thinking that if I was a student now, I'd want to walk in the doors of your school. I could feel the warmth and the caring. It's oozing, for lack of a better word. And I think one of the words that you said, I counted, I think, community 6 times. And the whole, the school-wide implementation of a caring school community, and belonging and emotional safety and community relationship building. These are the things that, as children, all we want is to feel loved and safe and valued. And when you provide those things, and that warm atmosphere, the academic growth and the cognitive challenges, that'll come if you provide that base and that foundation of a caring community. And I just want to say good job on what you're doing there. Keep it up for the kids. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you very much for your kind words. I'll definitely share that with my staff. It's something they strive for every day.
Other directors, questions, comments?
Chair Bauer. I want to thank my fellow board members. They've asked the majority of my questions already. So thank you so much. It's wonderful to work with smart people that are hearing the same things that I am. I also want to echo what Director Perez said about the belonging, the respect, and the emotional safety. I do think that is such an important foundation. And then that really does build our academic growth. So thank you so much for focusing on that. And I did want to ask in that vein, using your Youth Truth Survey poster from 2022. So you're but this is saying in 2023 that you want 85% or more of your third graders to report that the other students are friendly to them, and then the 75% or more report that there's an adult at school they can talk to. Is that something, I don't see that data on the 2022 poster, so is that something you didn't ask, or are those results elsewhere?
That's a great question as well. The little poster that you all received is just a smattering of some key questions that we wanted to highlight at the time. And we tried to choose some things that might be really accessible and easy for our community to connect with. But those 2 areas, as we were reflecting at the end of last year, when we got all of the data, right? Because Youth Truth, boy, they ask a lot of questions. We felt that upon returning after such a time away from, quote, right, traditional school in person, it was really important for our students, and really, this really supports what you were saying and the importance of belonging. We wanted our students to feel accepted both by peers and respected by peers, and also feel like they had an adult that they could speak to. So those 2 pieces were real critical. I'd like to say 100%, but these are surveys and kids, so we were trying to choose some realistic goals. Does that help?
Absolutely. And I just think that's so important. And I do believe that academics are absolutely important, but also just feeling good about being at school and feeling good about the people that are around them is so important. And can I also just say that I think it's super cool you have a 4th grader do your art on your Jogathon t-shirts. I think that is awesome. So thank you for finding some amazing ways to celebrate kids, and obviously bring your love and your passion and your caring for your staff and for your kiddos into your school building every day. We appreciate each of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the time.
Director Perez, can you make it quick? Are you still have a question?
Sure. I was just doing a thumbs up on the great
Okay.
job, Principal B, and everyone doing.
Very comprehensive, great report. I know you worked hard Love the video too, and impressed with the kids' language skills. Seeing nothing else, let's move on to agenda item 4, legislative agenda. I welcome Chief of Staff Tiffany Sharman for this agenda item. Welcome, Tiffany.
Good evening, everyone. Can you confirm that you can see the slides?
Yes.
Great, thank you. I have to say it's hard placement to follow the Milwaukee El Puente team on the agenda. I had to take a second that I was thinking, how was I going to make the legislative agenda come alive the way they did? And quite frankly, they are our why for this agenda item. So as we jump in here to the legislative agenda, it's so that the good folks at Milwaukee El Puente can do the work that they do. And I'm thankful that I get to come forward tonight and share with you our legislative agenda draft, or proposed legislative agenda, probably is more precise language. This evening, I will walk us through the proposed draft and seek your feedback as we move through. Just a quick step back, the Oregon legislature is scheduled to be in session starting the 17th of this month and finish by the end of June. Every 2 years, North Clackamas' school board has adopted a legislative agenda to articulate the school district's legislative priorities from state lawmakers, including funding requirements. Over the course of the session, details will emerge relating to the governor's recommended budget, the co-chair's budgets, the revenue forecasts. You have some dates here. As we move forward, my experience is that things seem cloudy towards the beginning, and then they start to become a more focused picture as we move through the session in terms of the funding piece. Did want to make sure you had these dates readily available in your packet. Each biennium, the North Clackamas legislative agenda identifies legislative stance and priorities. You have a hard copy of this in your packet. Provides direction to staff and has contact info for North Clackamas legislators. It looks like the 2 pages to the left of your screen there. The contact info for NCSD legislators, pretty important this time in that we've had redistricting. And so there are a couple of changes, as well as, of course, some recent elections. With careful review of stakeholders' input, from the comprehensive strategic planning process, and then other district engagement work, and then a review of the legislative priorities from other public education organizations, the proposed legislative agenda, as you see it, was drafted. In an effort to further align within our system, you'll see this year that what we have done is aligned 4 of the 6 areas to our 4 points of our strategic plan compass, which is here on the slide. I am thankful to both Chair Bauer and Director Perez for their support and input through the legislative agenda development. They, together with representatives from the Parent and Community Leadership Alliance, and the district leadership team, provided feedback on the actual written drafts, whereas we look to broad stakeholder input from other engagement work to really help feed the process and give us content. The North Clackamas School District Legislative Stance is there at the top of page 1, and it serves as the abstract, or maybe the summary of the ask of legislators. It could be referred to as our quick elevator speech. It could be referred to as kind of the what you could lift and paste if you wanted to share really concise information on some of what we're looking for. It points to the school district's mission and asks specifically for reliable funding that provides a full school year, staffing levels that allow for strong relationships between students and educators, a well-trained and supported diverse workforce, emotional and mental health supports, and high-quality academic and support programs. You are, of course, once adopted, welcome to use this stamps at any time. There are 6 specific asks in the document. I will go through them here in 6 slides. The first is that North Clackamas School District will advocate for funding that is adequate, stable, and predictable in order to continue providing a robust pre-K-12 education for students. Adequate funding is a struggle. I think you all have been at this table long enough to know that the question of what is adequate is a struggle, as is securing the stability and ensuring that we know soon enough to make plans for the next biennium is a struggle. The current service level that the governor will likely begin to build their budget on is in the $9.5 to $9.6 billion number. So 9.5 to 9.6 is what they're receiving for keeping the service level in place, current service level. We and other school districts, though, really figure that number needs to get to at least 10.3 billion in order to maintain current service levels. That number will get flushed out a little bit over the next few months, clearly as each district works with its budget committees and so on. But 10.3 billion is the number that public school districts in Oregon believe will be needed in order to maintain current service levels. Our strongest interest, of course, is in arriving at the full quality education model, which would be tagged at this biennium at 11.9 billion. So again, those numbers, 9.5 to 9.6 billion is where we think the governor will begin consideration. We know that districts are saying 10.3 billion in order to maintain current service levels, and quality education model would be at 11.9 billion. So while, of course, while North Clackamas supports the implementation of the full quality education model, we definitely want to seek at least 10.3 billion. So those are numbers you're going to be hearing over the course of the spring, and we would encourage your consideration of adopting in the legislative agenda. Additional areas of interest regarding funding, fully funding special education, preschool programs, summer learning opportunities, school facilities. There's a number of topics there. Next up is the first of the points on our strategic plan compass, and also is the second ask in our legislative agenda, student experience and success. We know that's central to our work in the school district and will be central to advocacy. Topics here include continually focusing on historically underserved students, teacher to student ratios that allow for strong core instruction and positive relationships between the students and their educators, student voice empowerment, protecting and expanding anti-bias curricula and policies, protecting the Student Success Act, including critical funding in career technical education, early childhood education. The next ask is a second point on our compass, people and culture. North Clackamas School District remains committed to advocating for the people who work within the school district, including promoting educator diversity, improving workforce recruitment, ensuring cultural responsiveness and anti-bias, anti-racist practices in daily work, and finally, investing in funding models that establish strong employee compensation. Next, family and community collaboration. We all know that the education of a child does not stop or start just during the typical school day. North Clackamas sees a need to advocate for more child and family enrichment activities, expansion of after-school and summer activities, expansion of affordable childcare options. And of course, all of those could be provided. We are somewhat agnostic about who provides those. Are they the school district? Is it a Parks and Rec? Is it community-based organizations?
are these more culturally specific organizations. We want to make sure in any advocacy that we're not painting this particular item as a picture of North Clackamas is seeking to provide all of these. Instead, those organizations best equipped to provide any of these activities should be afforded the funds and resources to do so. Next, resources and services. The well-being of a child and their family greatly affects a student's education, and ensuring that students and families have access to school-based and community-based programs and services better equip students to achieve at high levels. The school district promotes resources and policies that support meeting the emotional, mental, physical health needs of students and in the community. Further, the school district promotes programs that address food and housing insecurity, and then also that enhance school safety. Specifically, a couple of areas here: digital safety for students and cybersecurity for the school district as a whole. And finally, maintaining local control of pre-K 12th grade education. This board was elected by the community to provide local governance for public education, and a school district most strongly benefits students when its strategic goal setting and resource management can respond to its local needs. So for this reason, the district advocates for local control of pre-K 12 education, including opposing new unfunded mandates, ensuring that the school district makes instructional minute decisions, like the amount of time in each day that's devoted to one content area or another. Local school districts benefit from flexibility in any new requirements, and we will seek flexibility in new legislation that affects public education. What I've shared with you tonight is the proposed draft of the legislative agenda. Of course, I'm available to remain during your discussion should you have any feedback or questions at the chair's direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Any questions, comments for Tiffany, Chairman or Chief of Staff?
I would just have one comment, and once this is adopted, for good or bad, not sure yet, but we have a very large freshman class in the legislature, and so there's a lot of education that needs to be done with those lawmakers to have them better understand school funding and what the needs are.
Yes. Thank you for that comment, Director McVeigh. Other comments, questions?
Yes, Chair Bauer, I kind of want to piggyback on Director McVeigh's comment that very true. We do have our work cut out for us down in Salem this year. It's something that I work on every year. I advocate every year for public schools, especially during the session, but really year round. It's something that we need to keep in our legislature's mind at all times. One thing I wanted to check, of course, in the past, we've had, when we get that initial budget from the governor, we get an idea of what that looks like for our district so that we can really share the reality of that funding level, what this means for North Clackamas School District. Will we get that this year?
Thanks for the question. It's a good one. I suspect in the second, third weeks of February, it will start to become more clear where we're headed here. Sometimes that's not been until the middle of March that we start. So yes, and I can't for sure say when or what that will look like. We will have our budget committee info meetings starting up, I'm not sure, spring break-ish, somewhere in there. That's a little late for the legislative lobbying part or the advocacy part, but thank you for the question. I'll put it on the list for sure.
All right, thank you. Yes, we will. We start advocating actually tomorrow, I believe. It's one of our first meetings with legislators. It's so important that our legislators hear from from our school board, from our teachers, from our families and our students, and just understand what the budget truly means for our district and what it means for the level of funding and the kinds of services that we're going to be able to provide or not provide. So I just think it's so important, and just want to really encourage our community to I know the legislative agenda is a big document, just reading through it, and I know it's a lot to understand, and sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it takes a little bit to get through, but we definitely encourage our community to become involved. We encourage you to talk to your legislators, and to, of course, reach out to the district and to the PCLA and the groups that are lobbying down in Salem, and to really get involved in that budget process and understand what those dollars mean for North Clackamas. And I appreciate all the work. I wasn't on the legislative agenda team this time, but I really appreciate all the work. So much thought goes into it, and I appreciate all the work of the staff and the board members that have helped.
Thank you. Director Perez, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chief of Staff, Sherman. One question I have is there a way to, and maybe you already have, we've already done this, I don't know. Is there a way to get information out to all of our families in our community so that they know what dates we go down to Salem to advocate, so they know how to reach all of our legislators, so that they have those legislators' emails and phone numbers, and so they know how to a letter template, any and all of the above, getting that information to all of our families, because the hard reality is if we don't get this funding, chances are there's going to be, is it safe to assume there's going to be cuts?
We could not maintain all of our current programs and staff at a level of 9.5 to 9.6 billion. We could not do that.
So we need all hands on deck with all of our families. So my question is, are we able to get the information they need as far as getting in touch with our legislators and who the legislators are that they need to get in touch with, and so on and so forth? Can we do that?
Yes, we can. There's a role for the PCLA, and then a role here for the school district. We'll work, the communications team will certainly start to look at how through the month of February to start to roll that forward. We have to be a little careful not to get the cart before the horse until y'all adopt it. And so that's my,
I'm jumping ahead.
You know how I'm a sequential kind of person. Thank you, though. Yes.
Thank you, Staff.
Of course.
So that does bring up a question. If we did want to, well, give this, I mean, it'll be on the agenda for the next board meeting for approval. And we've just, I think the PCLA has just started reaching out to the legislators to try to plan some meetings. But again, there are a lot of new representatives and senators, and we need to establish that just relationship and that trust again. Director Perez, you have your hand up.
My apologies, Chair. I thought I had lowered it.
Okay.
There we go. I think I got it. I'm still getting OJT on this after a few years.
Any other questions from board members or comments? Director?
Yeah. Yes, Chair. I just want to make a comment. So I'm also on the Legislative Policy Committee of the Oregon School Boards Association, and it's separated out by region. So I help represent Clackamas region along with another school board member from another Clackamas area school board. And then there's actually a vacancy right now that's open for a third LPC member. So we are one person down. But the reason that I bring that particular group up is Oregon School Boards Association is also encouraging each region to host receptions, so legislative receptions with, legislators, so that we can talk about just the most pressing issues that our students, schools, staff are experiencing, as well as highlights, right? Because to some of the great points that were made, a lot of these legislators are going to be new. So we need to share a lot of our stories of, yes, why the numbers are important, but just also, personal stories of things that we're seeing in the community or in the classroom, issues impacting our students. So I just want to put that out there that I am planning on getting together with at least one of the other members who's a LPC for the Clackamas region to really get together to do some planning, figure out, when, how we can do a reception. We've been in some conversations with OSBA staff, and they're willing to lend a hand around logistics and just support for a potential reception coming up in the next couple of months. So just wanted to put that out there. There's lots of ways that we can, hopefully bring a lot of our stories in front of these lawmakers so that they can know what's going on and hopefully, vote on great legislation and approve a budget that, Chair, as you said, is going to not just meet, but hopefully exceed, right, what we need in our district. So please be on the lookout if you are a board member, as well as just, if we need some support around outreach or just helping to plan what a potential reception can look like. Thank you.
Are there questions, comments from the board? Yeah, this is what is essential to keep our schools going, to keep our staff, to keep the length of our school year. There's other pots of money and they're directed at other needs. So it's important to know and understand the budget too. So PCLA will be doing some outreach, and I know the district does too, on just educating people. One thing I want to stress too is, again, if you have any time, try to read the quality education model. I know it may not be for everyone, but it points out that we've had gaps since it came out in it's been out for 20 years. And it looks scientifically at what is the best education and how do we get there. And I'm glad in this legislative agenda that we've added, again, that 10.3, there's still a huge gap, but we want to shoot for getting by 2027 to finally fully fund our public schools. One other thing, I brought this up before, is the current service level is very minimum because they're always ratcheting down the current service level, and that's where you start. So we're never starting where we're fully funding, and they're not including a lot of factors like inflation, contracts, mandates, growth of enrollment. There's a lot of information in that report. So try to get educated, and then it takes all of us, as all the directors have said, groups of parents, groups of, the school board, our community, and we need to make the case. And those stories are so important when we go down to Salem. So we will be communicating with our community. Anything else, board? Thank you, Tiffany, for putting all that work together in the groups and the words. And we will hope to finalize that then in the January, the next board meeting, January 28th or something there, I believe.
26.
Will come back to us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The last agenda item, I believe, I'm going to welcome the next agenda item is a library media service report. And I'm going to let the public know we received a lot of information. We've looked at it. I welcome Executive Director of Technology, Joe Bridgman, for this agenda item, and introduce your guests or presenters.
Well, good evening. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here this evening. I am introducing this evening Dr. Leanne Shearer. She is our Director of Informational and Information Technology. She will be presenting this evening, as the Library Media Services Program is one of the areas that she supports. So Dr. Shearer.
Thank you. I am having a little bit of an issue sharing. For some reason, it's not allowing me to share my slides. So Donna, I wonder if you could pull them up.
Yeah, let me get them for you. Hold on.
Actually, Leanne, try now.
Well, it's giving me permission, but it's not Hold on.
It's a technology joke.
I know, right? You know? It's my permission on my computer. It's not letting me. So. Well, I'll start while Donna's getting the slides. I can actually start with what I wanted to say. And it's interesting that this is following behind the legislative agenda where we're talking about the quality education model. One of the pieces in the quality education model is about fully funding our school libraries and fully staffing our school libraries. And can you start at just the second slide, Donna? And really the centrality of libraries to what we do in schools. There's Donna, it starts with why libraries. Keep going all the way back to the beginning. One more. There we go. Yay. Okay. Thank you. So libraries are one of the areas of responsibility that I have, and it's one of the areas that gives me the most joy in the work that I do. I love reading and I love books and I love libraries. And so to have the opportunity tonight actually to represent the work that others in our district are doing around the importance of libraries and what they do for our students in our schools. I feel really honored to be able to represent those folks. And I'll talk a little bit about who I'm representing in a moment. Can you go to the next slide? The items I'm specifically going to talk about tonight is what do services in North Clackamas look like? And as part of that, what are options for families? I know, and even tonight, we've had some questions about what are those options for families? What is our collection development policy and process and the book acquisition process in North Clackamas? Next slide. Keep going. So the first question we ask is overarching, I opened with that quote from Laura Bush about the beauty and the importance of libraries, but there's actually, it's a required activity for our district. In our Division 22 requirements, we have this obligation to have a coordinated media program, and that includes instruction at all grade levels. It includes the services. There's direction about the services, the materials, the facilities, the staffing, what we need to do. And then in addition, we're required to periodically evaluate the appropriateness of the staffing and the programs that we have in place. Next slide. In Oregon, the standards around school libraries are about the student experience. What are the activities and skills and knowledge that students are expected to gain through their 12 years, 13 years in our schools? A bigger picture step back about what are standards for libraries themselves. We need to look beyond Oregon, and we look instead at our national school library standards. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to reference our AASL, which is the American Association of School Libraries. What are the standards for services and materials and structure in a school library? So a couple of the pieces that I'm going to start with is about how the library helps students gain new knowledge, and also about sharing, learning, and collaboration. Next slide. In North Clackamas, we have a library in every school. And I want to emphasize that because that wasn't always the case. We had, luckily, and I think Karina, when she was talking about Milwaukee El Puente, talked about the remodel that happened there. We also had
really the rebuild of New Urban. And part of that was creating a school library at New Urban. So we have at our elementary schools, we have 17 buildings that have school libraries, and they have a media technician. And that media technician meets with every class in a half-hour weekly session. So all of our classes rotate through the library, meet with the media technician, that's a classified position, in their library time. At the middle school, we have 4 middle schools. We also have a media technician. And at the middle schools, teachers arrange sessions for their classes. Students drop in during lunch, or they get a pass to go to the library. So it looks a little different, but we do have staffing as well at the middle school by a classified media technician. And then at the high school, we have 5 sites. And at Clackamas, Nelson, Milwaukee, and Putnam, we have a licensed teacher librarian as well as a media technician. And then at New Urban, we have a media technician. And this will become important in a little bit when I explain some of the collection development that we do. At the high schools, students wouldn't necessarily have a class that they come to in the library, but teachers arrange sessions for their classes. Some of our licensed teacher librarians actually push into classes, and students can drop in at lunchtime, during their free periods, after school, to check out books, to research, to get help. And all of those things happen throughout the day at our high school libraries. In addition, we have a licensed library media coordinator at the district level, and that person works closely with all of the library staff, but specifically with our elementary and middle school, as well as New Urban, to support the classified staff members who actually manage those libraries. Next slide. One thing I want to say before I go on is I do want to recognize we're in a little bit of a different situation because this is via Zoom, not in person, but I do know that many of our library media staff are actually watching. And I'm just so, again, I want to say how proud and honored I am to be able to represent them and the amazing work that they do, because they support the students and staff in accessing the materials in the library. Without them, we wouldn't have students able to check a book out. We wouldn't have staff able to identify instructional materials that they're going to be able to bring back to their classroom and use in their reading lesson or their math lesson or their science lesson. Our students and staff are the patrons of our school libraries. So our students and staff access through a digital database. I mean, of course, they can go and drop in and, wander the shelves and pick off a book. But they also have a login to what's called Destiny, which is our digital database of all of our library books. As I mentioned, at the elementary school, students do have weekly specific library sessions where they check out a book, return the book that they were reading before. We have search stations in all of our libraries where kids can go in. It's set up so they can, if they're looking for a particular book or they're looking for a book by an author, or they just want to browse and see what's available, they would get support from the media technician or the classroom teacher. And that's similar at the middle school and high school with search stations, with kids able to access either on if they have a North Clackamas device or from their own device with their login, or by going into the library itself and using a search station there. Next slide. Libraries represent, or the books in the collection represent, the needs of the entire community. And so there are a number of different books of different topics, different genres, some that some kids are really interested in and other kids aren't interested in. We have an obligation based on those standards that we started with to have a collection that is representative of all of our families, all of our community, and meets those needs. At times, a parent might not want their student to read a particular book that can be found in their school library. And parents actually, and guardians could go in, log in with their student's username and password and look at the database and see what's in the school library. They could also schedule a time to come into the library and look what use the search station and see what books are there. And if they find a particular book that for their student, for their child, they don't actually want their child to check that book out, what would happen is at the elementary school, they would have a conversation with their teacher or the library staff member who's there. At the middle and high school, it would more likely be the library staff member. And they would let them know, you know what, I don't feel comfortable for my child checking that book out. And at that point, we have a process built into our system where we would be able to make a note of that and limit the student's access to that book based on their parents' and guardians' specific desire. Next slide. There's also standards around collection development. And if you notice these standards, it talks about that we have a policy, we have criteria, we have goals for our library, that we put that policy in place, and then we maintain that collection through a process of adjusting, reviewing, thinking about what has our audience changed? Are there new technologies? Are there new formats or applications, or are there new genres? For example, you know, a lot of kids are reading different types of books now. And so we need to be aware of that, and we need to continue bringing in things like graphic novels as the student population changes and their interests change. And so that's also in our standards, in the accepted standards for the practice. Next slide. So North Clackamas has developed a collection development process. And that collection development guidance that we provide and the process that we go through is all around the collection development, like what books are actually in our libraries. So it's about how we decide what books to add to the library. It's about how do we decide that maybe this book doesn't need to be in the library anymore, or maybe, you know, 10 years ago, this book was really popular, so we bought 10 copies of it and it was out all the time. But now, you know what, we only have 1 or 2 books being checked out at a time. So maybe we need to remove some of those books. And it's really about the library media professional curating those resources and understanding the needs of the community. What are the learning and teaching needs of the school? How is it different, for example, at Milwaukee El Puente than Vern Duncan Elementary? And really identifying the resources that are appropriate for that school community. We do have a board adopted policy that references specifically how materials are reviewed and adopted and approved. And that's what's used as in this process of developing the collection. We do also have adopted library standards. So what are our goals for our library? How many books would we want to have per student? What types of books? How new should the books be? And so we've put together goals, and then we also have selection criteria, which are the things we think about when we're making decisions about the collection. Next slide. And so the things that I'd reference from that policy, the first one I really want to emphasize is that the materials are representative of the contributions of all people, and that is regardless of the individual's perceived or actual race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, national or ethnic origin, marital status, age, mental or physical debility, perceived disability, pregnancy, familial status, economic status, veteran status. And really our purpose is to mitigate and eliminate culturally biased or materials that are not representative of our community. We have an obligation, not only sort of morally and from these national standards, but also from our North Clackamas instructional materials policy, to provide information for students so that they can make decisions about their lives, and materials that are going to help students develop that knowledge and literary appreciation and that understanding of other people and themselves. Next slide. A couple other pieces I want to highlight is that the books are representative. And I want to point to number 7, that is to distribute curriculum materials and instructional supplies to the schools of the district in such a manner to ensure that the equivalence of such materials exists amongst the schools. So we have different libraries at different schools, and we need to support all of those schools. And that's one of the pieces that we've been trying to do is, okay, how are we funding our libraries? And are we making sure that we have equitable funding happening so that we don't have, for example, one library that has a whole bunch of really old books and another library that's brand new, full of really current resources. So we're really working on across the board on consistency of programming and consistency of offering an opportunity for students in not only our instructional materials in our classroom, but also what's in our library. And that's important for individual students to be able to identify books that they're interested in, but also at times our teachers might use the library as a resource for their instructional approach. Next slide. In the policy that's referenced here, there is a specific section on page 2 that's about library materials that lays out what the selection and approval process looks like. And so what I'm going to do now is talk about, okay, how have we operationalized that in North Clackamas? What does that actually look like? Next slide. So I mentioned that we have our library standards goals. These are pretty much nationally recognized of what would a good library be. And on average, a school library would have 17 to 20 books per student. So that's our baseline goal, is that we would be able to provide that many books per student for them to choose from. Roughly 40% fiction, 60% nonfiction. And of that nonfiction, 40% should be more 40% or more should be less than 5 years. And I have a little asterisk there because this is one of the things that we're spending a lot of time with our library media staff thinking about is this an appropriate balance, with the idea that we have Chromebooks now and students are doing a lot of their nonfiction reading and research digitally rather than going to the library. I remember going to the library. This is going to sound weird, but I loved reading the encyclopedia. Like I was really into that for a while. And so I would go to the library and I would get the P and I would look at the P, right? Kids don't do that anymore. They go online. I don't do that anymore. I go online. Of course, I don't read encyclopedias either anymore, but so that's a consideration we have right now that we're thinking about is this really an appropriate goal, 40-60? Is it 50-50 or is it really 60-40 even? That maybe our libraries are more heavy in the fiction than the nonfiction because of the new resources and ways that kids are able to access information. The other library standard that we have is coming from several places. It's coming from our equity stance as a district. It's coming from our materials adoption policy, is that the books are reflecting the multiple identities of the student population in all of those different identities and protected classes across our district and across our communities. Next slide. At times, so we have limited space. There's not all the space in the world for every book that we've ever purchased at a particular school. And also at times, some books might need to be removed, and that's the process called weeding. So as we're developing our collection, we're reviewing and we're pulling out books that aren't used anymore, are inaccurate. I was talking to one of our media techs, and she was describing some computer books from the 80s that were in her nonfiction section. And we decided maybe that wasn't as up to date of our computer technology, and that perhaps that was something that didn't need to take up shelf space anymore. So that's just an example of what this process looks like. Sometimes books are loved, and they're loved so much that we need to get a new copy because the condition is such that it's falling apart. So our library staff are continuously evaluating the collection for the relevancy and the appeal, because sometimes what we think appeals to kids doesn't. And so we really take student voice into account. And this weeding process of removing books is a critical component of the collection development process. Next slide. We do have specific criteria that our media staff work on. The things that they think about are that we've identified together as important is the first thing is the book appropriate for the age and development of the students in the school. So what's appropriate at a high school is not appropriate necessarily at an elementary school. What's appropriate in one context is not appropriate in another. So that's the first piece that that our staff look at, is the developmental appropriateness for their community. And then after that, we look at what are some reviews that have come up. What are authoritative sources saying about quality books? We actually have a group of folks tomorrow that are going to a workshop that happens every year that's called, I wrote it down, What's New in Children's Literature, and they do it each year. And that it's a here's themes, here's new books, here's hot text, here's what kids are really interested in nationally that are newly published. And so really going to those authoritative sources like the Association of Library Services, the Young Adult Library Services, what are award-winning books? School Library Journal is sort of a gold standard for what's appropriate and what's out there. And so those are the sources that our library media staff are actually going to find those really high quality books that kids are going to be interested in, and they're going to meet our library standards. And then again, the other piece to that, and I think I referenced this a little bit, is the library is a resource for our students, but also for our teachers. And so we want to know what curriculum, what's happening in the classrooms, what supplemental resources do teachers need to be able to access? And that may be a place that we add books to our library so that it doesn't sit just in one teacher's class. Every teacher would be able to access it. Next slide. As we're looking at the different types of books, another piece that we need to keep in mind is that the books are an authentic representation of individuals of diverse backgrounds and identities. So what that might mean is that as we're considering a book that represents a particular, for example, cultural group, was that written by someone from that cultural group? Is it truly representing the ideas and beliefs and thinking of that group? Or was it written from an outsider looking in? So those are pieces that we consider as we're deciding whether or not we would add a particular book to a library. The other pieces we really need to think about is it factual? Is it an authoritative source? Does it represent different viewpoints? Is it if it's a controversial issue, do we have multiple perspectives that we're representing, so that students can have that opportunity to really practice their critical thinking and in guidance, their analysis of the reading and the ideas. We have an obligation to provide that so they have the resources that can practice those skills. And then finally, it's again really interesting that this is happening the same time, for example, that Milwaukee El Puente was presenting, because we have instruction and learning and happening in multiple languages. And so we have an obligation to make sure that our libraries represent those students that bring those other languages. So we have spent some time and some money trying to build up. Clearly, it's never going to be enough, I think. I've never felt guilty about spending money on a book. I'll say that just to start from. When I didn't have money for other things, I'd always find money for books. And I think that's true as a school district as well. But we need to really make sure that we're providing books in Spanish in our dual language schools. And then in our schools, for example, we have a number of schools that have that are experiencing a lot of in-migration of families who are speaking other languages. And so we may have schools that have a large population of Vietnamese speakers, or a large population of Chinese speakers, or a large population of Russian or Ukrainian speakers. And so we need to be aware of that. And as we're looking at our libraries, make sure that we have books in those languages as well. Next slide. So what does this actually look like? Well, again, we go back to our standards and we say, okay, our school library has to represent all the members in the global learning community, diverse ideas, the different cultures and linguistic needs of the students. All of these things I just talked about are actually in the standards as well. Next slide. So we have a process. And this is what the process looks like. Our library, it starts with our in-building library media staff, and they analyze the collection. We have some digital tools. I mentioned Destiny, which is our database. There's tools that can generate detailed reports about how many books, what types of books, which books are being checked out, which books aren't being checked out. They consider student and staff needs. There's most of our schools, I'm going to say all of them, but I haven't talked to every single one. I'm assuming they all do, but the ones I've talked to all have. They have a formal process for kids to request books. I really want to read this book, or I want books by this author, or they'll go to classes and talk to kids and find out what they're interested in. Talk to teachers about what are the ideas that kids are grappling with that they want to learn more about through fiction, maybe. And so as we're analyzing the collection, it's both sort of reporting on what are the books, but also gathering information about what books people want in the community. And then that allows the library media tech or the librarian to come up with particular focus areas. You know what? My students are really interested in, so I really think that we need to buy more of those types of books in order to add to our collection. Then we say, okay, well, what are some specific books that I might want to buy? It may be that I'm replacing a really popular book that got lost or damaged. It may be, as I said, teachers or students requesting. It may be a continuation of a really popular series, maybe the new, whatever book is out. What are some emerging genres that kids are interested in? And really, it's about creating that balance. And so we're always analyzing as we're taking books out, what are we bringing in? How are we maintaining those standards? And then at that point, there's a process of submitting books for review. And it looks a little different depending on the level. So can we go to the next slide? So what our policy says is that books are recommended for addition to the school library by district or building media staff. And that's exactly what happens. Our media and staff create lists of books that they want to buy. And then those books are approved by the superintendent. Well, I happen to know that our superintendent is very busy, right? She doesn't have time to read every book that someone wants to put in our school library. So our policy allows for a designee. And so in our district, our designees, when we have a licensed teacher librarian, the superintendent provides that authority to approve and review the book for the library. So at Nelson, Clackamas, Milwaukee, and Putnam, our licensed teacher librarians have that as part of their job responsibility and part of their professional responsibility. Now, we have schools, as I mentioned, that do not have licensed teacher librarians. And so in that case, we have a district team that is formed to serve as the superintendent's designee. And that is to approve those library books that are selected and proposed by the library media staff. And that would be all of our elementary schools, all of our middle schools, and then New Urban High School. And I want to do a little bit of an asterisk because I don't think I mentioned this before. New Urban High School is actually also, frankly, just out of the kindness of her heart and her love for libraries, supported the media technician is also supported by one of our high school librarians from Clackamas High School, who is sort of, because it's new, helping that library get off its feet. And our other high school librarians have also supported that library with some resources and books and things like that. So they work closely together. Formally, the purchases or new additions to the collection get approved through the review process. Next slide. And what that process looks like is there's a team that meets quarterly and they review materials that have been recommended for purchase or for addition. And the reason I say purchase or addition is because we also receive at times donations. And so the same standards would apply to that. And we would send them to review if they haven't already been approved for that same grade level. So if there's a book at Scouters Mountain Elementary School and the librarian at Llewellyn has that on their list, it's already been approved. It's already in Scouters Mountain. So that book doesn't need to be reapproved for Llewellyn. It's already exists in the elementary library collection, and our staff can review the database to see that. But any new books that aren't adopted in one of our libraries aren't part of the collection. That's what would be approved or denied by this review team. And this team is composed of our district library media coordinator, the director of instructional and information technology, that's me. And then we have representatives from teaching, learning, and professional development, elementary programs, and secondary programs. And that's to provide representation to meet those goals of our library, where it meets the curricular and developmental needs of the students. And so having folks from these areas helps to provide a wider perspective. I will also say we've been having some discussion, and our high school librarians are really interested in stepping up in some leadership ways in our district, and they may start participating in this team as well. Next slide. What I want to do now is go through just briefly an example of what this looks like so it becomes really clear. If you're interested, there's a link there so that you can go to this Battle of the Books. And Milwaukee El Puente, Karina actually mentioned that that their school participates in this. We have many elementary schools particularly receive copies of these books. This is a voluntary or a volunteer-driven sort of let's develop interest in high quality literature and reading, right? So there are lists of books that are identified by this Oregon Battle of the Books, and then kids read them in teams, and then they compete to be able to show their comprehension and understanding of those books. So we need to get those books so that kids can read them. Now, in some schools, the best way and the easiest way for those books to get in kids' hands is to have it actually in our school library. So we have to review those books to say, you know what, are these really appropriate for our school library? We know they've been identified by Oregon Battle of the Books, but is that appropriate for our school library? So this is a normal thing that happens actually every fall is, hey, here's a whole bunch of books, let's put them in the library. And so we have to review those. And so this year, one of the things, I just, as an example, we reviewed the books, and there was one book that was called, that was in the OBOB grades 6 through 8, so for our middle school, that was called Girl in the Blue Coat. And it was actually, when we went to the school library journal, this was actually recommended for grades 9 through 12. Now, that doesn't mean that a middle schooler might not enjoy that book. And that doesn't mean that if it was a book that was contextualized by the classroom teacher, that it would be appropriate for a student. But our library collection standards really clearly say that this is what we look at first. Is it appropriate for the developmental level of the students? And so because this book was really identified as appropriate for high school, we said, you know what, this isn't one that we're going to be able to have in our school library. So that was an example of one that the review committee said, no, it's not appropriate. A different example is there's books that that were part of OBOB that actually weren't published as children's books. And so they weren't reviewed by School Library Journal because they were published as an adult book. Well, you know what? Our high schools have students up to age 21, and we have a lot of adults that are actually in our high schools. One of the books was called All Systems Red. So it was in the high school range for OBOB. When we looked at it, the themes really were appropriate for high school students, even though it didn't have a review of School Library Journal. All the other sources that the review team went to told us that, you know what, this is probably an appropriate book for high school. And so we went ahead and approved that one for high school, just as a matter of course. Most of the books appropriate. I think all of the elementary books were appropriate for elementary. And so they were approved. An example of that is Rescue on the Oregon Trail was one of the OBOB books for elementary. Next slide. That's what I have other than questions. And what I really want to end with is that just as a reminder that our libraries are really critical resources in our holistic approach to instruction and supporting students, and that those books in our schools and the resources that we have available really do need to represent all of the learners and members of our community, so that as people as our students are going into the world and as they're thinking about their place in the world, that they have resources that they can go to that helps them understand that place. And as Maya Angelou says, see that they're not alone, and that underline that really they're not any different from anybody else. And I'll take questions now if anyone has any.
Thank you, Dr. Leanne Shearer. I'll open the floor for questions from the board or comments.
And this is Dr. McVeigh.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. McVeigh.
Thank you for the presentation. It was great. A question, you mentioned parent choice in elementary. Is that same choice available for middle and high?
Do you mean if a parent says, I don't want my student to read that book? Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. The process would be a little different, that they would approach the librarian at the high school or the media technician at middle school, rather than going to the classroom teacher.
And but if someone doesn't, to make it maybe easier for either for the family member, they can go into Destiny, search by subject or topic, if you will, and then just click those that they want to.
Well, they would need to, they could say, I don't want my student to check out any books on soccer, right? And then there would be a note that would be in the student's record. And so when the student then goes to check out a book on, it wouldn't block a particular book, and the system wouldn't know that's a soccer book, but the person checking it out would get an alert that would say, oh, they're not supposed to read soccer books. So no, I'm sorry, you need to go choose a book about basketball, for example.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other hands? Or just go ahead.
Yes, Director Benaloga, thank you. Thank you for that question, Director McVeigh. I think that's really important that people understand, and I think that's an important point to make, that parents don't necessarily need to know the titles, that they just need to know the subject matter. So that was excellent. I also was an encyclopedia reader. When I was growing up, my parents always bought the World Book, and they got the yearbook every year. And I'm a voracious reader, have grown up in public libraries. And I think for me, and I'm hoping that that's what we're trying to do by building our collections, is that we're trying to bring things to our students that are not that are not in their world, that they haven't had a chance to experience or might not get a chance to experience. But what an amazing opportunity to travel and to think and to live outside of your community by reading a book. I have a question about reading.
Yes.
So I know it says that it's continuously. How often is that? Is it every year, every semester? I mean, how do we do that? And then is there a threshold for considering that the book is rarely used to decide that they're going to get rid of that book?
That's a good question. So weeding is ongoing, but at least annually. And so we do are at the elementary level, it looks a little different than middle and high school, but the library shuts down maybe a week before school's out, so that the media staff have time to complete that process to get everything back in place. It's a little different because students actually go for specific times in that elementary library, whereas the middle and high school is more drop-in. But yes, at least annually, but it happens ongoing. There isn't a particular, the other question is a little bit tougher because there isn't a particular threshold that says, oh, if this hasn't been checked out in time, then it's going to be tossed out, right? Because part of it is, do we have books that are going to come in too? So if there's a book that's still appropriate and hasn't been checked out, but we don't need the shelf space, maybe it would stay in the library. But if all of a sudden I get, we get $11.9 billion, right? And we've got we got some money coming in for some books, then we might make a different decision about that book.
All right, excellent. Well, I just want to thank you. This is a tremendous amount of information. And I really thank the team and everyone and you that have really put a lot of time in to giving this information to our community and to the board and for putting the presentation together. So I want to thank you. Lots of information. And I appreciated having time to go over it this week. And so thank you so much.
Thank you.
So maybe I should just call on the other directors to be sure that they have a chance to speak. Director Schradel, do you have any questions, comments?
I do not have any questions, but thank you for the presentation.
Okay. Director Perez?
Thank you for the presentation. I do have one question. And this, now that I think about it, I've had a parent ask me about this. Oregon Battle of the Books. Is that something that, so how would that, can you provide an example of how that would work in our school district? Like as far as, can you make that more clear? I think.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but yeah. Just an example, like what does it look like? How does it work in our district?
Yeah, how does it get started? How does it, how would.
So it's that's a volunteer driven, I don't know, even organization, I would say. It's an organization. So it's not like all of our third graders and through fifth graders participate in their classroom. So it's not teacher driven, it would be volunteer driven. And so it might look like an after school program where a parent volunteer meets with kids and they talk about the books and they practice. There's resources that Oregon Battle of the Books provides for that type of thing. I know we do have some schools that if it's only after school, that limits the access for some kids. So I know there are schools that have opportunities, for example, during lunch for teams to meet to do that. But it would be a voluntary sort of extracurricular activity that's supported by volunteers. The connection with libraries is how do kids get their hands on the books? So it might be that we have the books in our library and we have a special shelf that has the OBOB books so kids can quickly go to them. And so that would be the connection sort of formally with the libraries, is more about providing those resources or the access to the resources.
Okay, thank you very much.
Director Ford? Not sure if she's still on. Director Way?
No, this is a great presentation. So thank you. Thank you for the information.
Thank you for asking a question about the Oregon Battle of the Books. I don't think that my kids, that was in their school at that time. So I appreciate that. I don't think I have any others also. So thank you for a great report, more information. And if there are no other comments, we'll just close the meeting here in a minute. But I wanted to thank you all for your time this evening in support of public education. It serves all of our children, each and every single one. Thank you, community, students, and staff for listening tonight. And I just wanted to add that, remember, our meetings may not always be the most appropriate avenue for your input. We'd love to hear from you, but it may be at the state level when the curriculum first comes together. Or if it's a local school issue, be sure that you talk with your teacher, you talk with your principal. But thank you, board. Since we are celebrating, I celebrate you. I'm extremely grateful for each one of you. And I know that you do this for the right reasons. You love our students and you care and support our dedicated staff. So we'll just keep up the good work. It's now 9:03 and this public meeting of the North Clackamas School District Board of Directors is adjourned. Have a good evening.